They just keep doing it. It's obviously an instruction to shoot on sight, and that space is key to it. If a defender's close enough, you're going to get a block in, but they're actually pushing a defence back in order to open up that space there. And as you say, give Premier League players space on the edge of the box, they'll do that.
Aston Villa remain 3 points off the summit of the Premier League after coming from behind away at West Ham United to win by 3-2, thanks in no small part to Morgan Rogers. Those 2 goals, and particularly that absolute screamer at the end. I'm Will Pugh, that's Sun Sports tactical guru Dean Scoggins. And Dino, as always, you will have 5 tactical points from the game that fans may or may not have noticed, as we always do on Tactics Exposed. But as is the first time this season we've done Aston Villa, we'll be having a bit of a broader look and asking the big question, are they really Arsenal's main title rivals?
Yeah, well, it's obviously a long shot, but they're banging them in from all over the place at the moment, so why not, hey? And yeah, they're a really interesting team, and obviously Unai Emery, one of the best tactical brains there is.
Absolutely, right. Give us the 5 points we'll be looking at this show, Dean.
Yeah, well, there's only one person we can start with, isn't there? Shot of Morgan's, Morgan Rogers. Why and how are Villa scoring that many goals from outside the area? This is not a fluke, it's not an accident, we'll show you why. Number 2, Unai's boxing clever. I mentioned the boss there. He has a box in the middle of the park, but it's not like Chelsea's. We'll have a look at that in a moment. And you're the one that I want, Youri Tielemans, who's a bit of an unsung hero, I think, for Aston Villa, and the way he makes runs as well. Pau Torres is class. Now, he didn't play at West Ham, but he was replaced there by Lindelof. But this how they play that left and right centre-back position that's so interesting. And number 5, hi-ho, Aston Villa. That's their song. Little hat tip to the Villa fans there. But it's the high line that I'm interested in.
Absolutely. I always forget, Dino, you used to be the Midlands patch reporter.
I did. I had a great time covering Villa in Europe, and then some pretty high and low times up there as well. But great fan base. Had a brilliant time with them up there.
Exactly, spent a lot of time in that Villa Park press box.
Yeah, and the old pub in Aston as well.
Yeah, well, exactly, I can imagine. Right, Dino, I was at this game yesterday. I've been moaning at you for a long time now, saying, why do we never do West Ham on Tactics Exposed? And your answer, usually because they're rubbish, is totally fair enough. Yesterday, weren't necessarily rubbish, but we did give Villa a few opportunities. I was obviously frustrated, but Villa looked dangerous from the off and capitalised when they were given the opportunities, thanks in no small part to Morgan Rogers.
Yeah, well, they're exciting to watch, Villa, aren't they? Because there's a couple of things that they do straight from the off, which is one is play out from the back in a ridiculous position, which we'll come back to. I say ridiculous, it's great fun. From the back, and obviously we saw that with the fastest goal in the Premier League. Were you in your seat by then?
I was in my seat, actually.
Yeah, not in the bar. But yeah, so they do that. So that makes it exciting to play against because they give you an opportunity, and it's quite hard in your mouth a lot of the time when you're watching Aston Villa. But the fans in the whole end will have seen it so often now that maybe they're a little bit calmer. And the other thing is, obviously, let's start with this guy. Just what they're trying to do, Aston Villa, throughout, is get the ball to Morgan Rogers in the number 10 position. I mean, it sounds fairly simple, but in the Premier League, it's not that simple. And what they do, we've seen other teams really struggle to get their playmakers into the game this season because teams are so direct. And so number 10s are getting bypassed a little bit by balls over the top, and they're feeding on scraps a little bit. Villa aren't doing that. If they go direct, then they're playing off the front man to try and bring the 10 into play. But let's focus on the shooting. 10 goals from outside the box. They're outperforming their XG by an absolute mile. And everyone keeps saying, this has got to stop. This has got to end. They're getting lucky. They're not getting lucky. Again, we often refer to us playing our level of football. There was always that one lad, and it wasn't you or me, who used to bang it in from the edge of the box, right? Used to smack it in the top corner. And when he did it, everyone just get close to him. How are we giving him that much space? If you give him that space, he's going to hit it in the top corner. And these guys are top class. They're international footballers. Matty Cash has scored from outside the box. They've had Kamara score from outside the box. They've had Morgan Rogers banging them in. As I say, 10 goals from there. And it's because they create space in that area. They did it really cleverly against Tottenham, where it's a run that goes beyond the ball. So I think that time was Tielemans. I might be wrong. We'll show it in the graphic. But he goes past the ball, which then, obviously, we talked about Liverpool doing this with an offside busting technique last year. If you make runs, Ollie Watkins especially does it. Then when they bring on Marlon, he does it, okay? They play that way a lot. They push players past the ball, and that means it opens up that space on the edge edge of the box. And there was 2 or 3 times against West Ham where I thought, hang on a minute, you've got to play the little pass around the edge to the fullback that's overlapping. They don't. The fullback takes the man away as the decoy run, and then obviously someone smacks it in the top corner. So they just keep doing it. It's obviously an instruction to shoot on sight, and that space is key to it. If a defender's close enough, you're going to get a block in. But they're actually pushing a defence back in order to open up that space there. And as you say, give Premier League players space on the edge of the box, they'll do that.
Exactly. Well, Aston Villa's sort of arsenal of rangefinders, if you like. What is it you think that's encouraging Emery to go, no, go on, have a crack? Because lots of teams, Man City you look at, for example, you never see such things. They're recycling the ball, they're sort of trying to create that opportunity of maximum likelihood of scoring, basically. Yeah. Why is Emery going, you know what, boys, just have a crack?
Well, there's two ways of looking at that. So there's 2 tactics, right? So the other team who are outperforming their I don't really like XG, I'll be honest, right? I know I'm a nerd, I know I'm a tactics nerd, but XG doesn't really do it for me a lot of the time, because for me it's about the player and the opportunity that is in that position that you've manufactured. So the quality of the chance doesn't necessarily mean the quality of the player behind it. But this one is really, really key, because Tottenham are actually outperforming their XG more than Villa. But Thomas Frank doesn't let them shoot. He doesn't want them shooting from outside the area, and they score from set pieces and stuff like that. But in Aston Villa, who are second in outperforming their XG, is because he's saying, go for it and shoot. And so the 2 reasons for that is, one, he has got the ability of the players like Morgan Rogers to do it. We'll come back to his technique in a second. The second is that it wasn't working for them the first few games of the season. They couldn't score. They weren't creating any chances. I mean, they were in the bottom 3 after 4 or 5 games. And so it was almost, we're not creating those chances. Teams are putting this low block against us. So therefore, let's have a dip. And what that means is, if you have shots, the opposition naturally are going to get dragged out. So a few times in previous games, a defender, centre-back gets dragged out, and then they'll play around it. But if you don't get dragged out, have a go. So really, really clever. And then, there's this amazing technique that I want to just look at with Morgan Rogers.
Yeah, I think what's interesting for me, Dino, is when, for example, a wide player's out wide, you always like the best wingers always leave the defender not knowing which way they're going to go, right? But to do that, in order to have the defender believe it, in the early stages of the game in particular, you have to go both ways, don't you?
Yeah.
And is it the same sort of thing with this and all the shots Villa are having from a long way away, in that if you want defenders to believe that you are going to have a dig, so they jump out and close you down to create the space for the runner, you have to at least sort of 40% of the time actually have a dig, and the more they're going in, the more teams are going to be like, no, we need to close it down.
Exactly, and early shots, as well, early in the game, and as you say, to make them think that. But they have this very good way of getting you 3v4 or 4v4, which we'll come back to in a second, because then the defender has got a decision to make. Because if there's a runner there, he can't just go to the ball. It's so simple then, isn't it, for the little ball round the outside? Right. So if you get 3v4, 4v4 in those areas, you create that halfway decision from a defender who thinks, well, I can't just fly out, but also, if I drop back, then Rogers is going to put it in the top corner.
OK, now, Dino, talk to me about exactly how he does that. I was at London Stadium yesterday, and it looked to me, again, with my West Ham hat on, that we'd just done our usual, vacated midfield and gone, no, go on, you have a run through, we'll back off, just have a pop when you like, and then it flies in the top corner. An absolutely wonderful strike, but I imagine there was more to it from a Villa standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about in a moment the runs that got it there, but let's just look at this grab that we've got here, or this picture that we've got on screen here. The shape that his foot is in.
So this is from the Leeds game.
This is from the Leeds game. But he did exactly this against West Ham, and he did exactly this against Tottenham. The reason we've chosen this one is because it's from a dead ball, so it's a little bit easier to get a really clean take on. But his foot's in just an odd position. It's like he's got sort of this, double jointed ankle that gives him this floppy foot position. Yep. Normally when you strike a ball with that amount of power, you're lacing it. So you're hitting it like that, yeah? So you see all the power come through the ball. And when we're teaching young players to try and do it, it's like, that golf swing of the ball through, try and get through your laces and go right through. And he opens his foot up. So it's not knuckleball in the way that we used to call Ronaldo doing it. There was a very, very good set piece taker called Janini Open and Meccano Lozano, who used to do this in the French league and was one of the best free kick takers ever. And maybe Morgan Rogers has been studying him. But what this does is it swerves both directions, whichever way it goes. He's not meaning it to go one way or the other. It's just the movement of the ball will throw the goalkeeper off, as it did in this. But it's the dip that ball gets on. Because he's hitting it like that, it goes up and then comes back down again. And it is absolutely remarkable. And to do it from a free kick is one thing. To do it on the run against Tottenham, against West Ham as well, is absolutely remarkable. And again, definitely, Unai Emery is watching this on the training ground when they're all practicing shooting and thinking, well, if he's doing this to Martinez in goal, then let's do it every game. And so this is a tactic, this is a setup, push teams back and let them shoot.
Right, Unai's boxing clever. Point number 2, Dino. I know, having stood across you for long enough in the Tactics Exposed studio, I know about box midfields now. Are we talking the same thing as we do when we chat about Enzo Maresca and Chelsea?
No, we're not. We're talking, it is a box, but it's using different players. So Chelsea use the striker, the number 10, and then the 2 midfield players. Aston Villa don't do that. They use the 2 centre-backs and the 2 midfield players. And those 2 in midfield, I've got to say, Onana and Kamara, are, as a pair, probably as good as any in the division, OK? I know we've got Rice and Zubimendi, but these 2, and what's really interesting about these 2, and I'll come on to why the box works in a second, is that every time I was looking at it yesterday and the previous games that I've watched in the research, they're just next to each other all the time. The connection with the 2 of them, every time you take a grab, every time you get a steal, it's like they're never more than 10 yards away from each other in a straight line. And then you take it back. Yeah, absolutely. And then you take it back and the 2 centre-backs are right behind them. So these guys are taking the positions from each other. And what it does, 2 things. From a playing out perspective, the 2 midfield players are like the decoy movement, to open up those lanes for Aston Villa. And secondly, from a defensive point of view, it means that as long as you've got that solid box in the middle, that allows your fullbacks to go forward and join the attack. And obviously then allow the other 2 10s or the wide players in Rogers and McGinn to come in from the outside. So I'll just walk that through a second. You have the box, you have the fullbacks. So when Villa play out, the fullbacks move on. And then the nominally wide players in Rogers and McGinn come into the number 10 positions from the wings. So that is the box structure in the middle is what gives them the opportunity to play everywhere else.
OK, fair enough, Dino. So what does that do to opponents? What does it force the opponents into doing? Or what are Villa trying to achieve?
Well, normally you say that some teams will drop off, OK? So they'll let centre-backs have the ball. Villa, with the 2 centre-backs and the goalkeeper, goad teams on. They bring them on, and I'll come on to that again in a minute as the way that they play out. But what then means is that if you're not going to push right on the centre-backs as an attacking team, then you've probably got 2 or 3 players who are in between the box, in a line in between the box. So 3 players, let's say, in between the 2 centre-backs and the midfielders. What that then means is you're trying to get the ball to the 10s. So Villa's 2 holding midfield players, let's call them, either go narrow to bring players inside to mark them, because otherwise it's just going to get a ball fired into them. And what that does is then provide that outside passing lane for Rogers and McGinn to come and receive the ball, or Tielemans when he runs into those gaps. And then if teams do the other way and drop off onto that line, then Onana and Kamara will go wide to open up the box shape that way, and then they'll go fired into the centre forwards or 10's feet. So by having those 2 angles, they're actually creating 4 passes, because 2 one side and 2 the other, all for the same centre-back or goalkeeper. So it's only little subtle movements. And of course, then if they concede possession, because they do take risks, if they concede possession, they've still got that solid 4 in the middle to make those recovery tackles. So all of that playing out is built around that box of 4 in the middle.
So these sort of gates they're opening, Dino, to open up these passing lanes, it sounds a bit like what Chelsea used to do, and we're talking obviously similarly with the box midfield about how you used to talk about Levi Colwill drilling balls into Nicholas Jackson. Is that what it is, those kind of like express lanes?
Exactly
from
that.
defence to the forwards?
Yeah. It's not pootling along in the inside lane. This is the fast lane that they're opening up here, right? The express lane, as you called it, very good. As when they get the ball, Pau Torres, Lindelof played yesterday, or Konza the other side, or Martinez, they are not going to say we're just going to play the ball and bounce a pass back in. They're not playing bounce passes for the sake of playing bounce passes. Open up the gap, and stick it through there. Put your foot down, express lane, right into the number 10s or the striking position. And then, of course, they've got McGinn, who is the most ridiculously bottom-heavy swivel player in the league.
Yep.
They've got Ollie Watkins, who can have the ball to feet, and they've got Morgan Rogers and Tielemans, who are two of the most press-resistant players around, who take the ball on the half-turn that way. And so that's what he's doing. He's been doing it a while. It's not actually new this season, but they just keep doing it. They keep getting better at it. And this season, they're freeing the fullbacks much more as well.
You're the one that I want, Dino. Now, you nearly goaded me into singing another Grease song. I think Reese Frightening it was.
We've had a lot of Grease, haven't we? Yeah.
Youri Tielemans, I thought he was absolutely phenomenal at London Stadium. One of those sort of underrated, classy football players. And again, sort of has a real big impact on Aston Villa when he plays, hitting those sort of heights that they were hoping they would get from him. He struggled a little bit at the beginning, didn't he? But just talk to me about this man and the impact he has on him.
Yeah, you go right back to when they played PSG over 2 legs last year. Bear in mind, PSG went on to conquer everything, and Villa went toe-to-toe with them, across those 2 legs. And to be honest with you, we're a bit unlucky, and Arsenal might have won the Champions League had Villa knocked PSG out. But yeah, what it is about people like Tielemans, and yeah, you're right, he's an underrated player, but he's got a job and he's very good at it. So half the time he's an 8 and half the time he's a 10. And so his decision making and game IQ is so high. He's another one of these players which I talk about a lot, is carrying out a manager's instructions on the field. And a lot of time fans will go, oh, he just didn't do very much. Watch him off the ball. Absolutely magnificent. He did it at Tottenham. He did it at the London Stadium yesterday, where he makes this run that takes players out of the way. And he makes diagonal runs across the face of Ollie Watkins. So that means that Watkins is holding the end line. Tielemans will go across in front of him. So he drags defenders all the way across with him, and that gives the space for Morgan Rogers and John McGinn. And what he also does is, if he sees McGinn or Rogers come off the line and go into the 10 position, he goes the other way. So he's the one keeping the attacking shape, and also, as I say, turning in tight positions, winning the ball back in their high press. He's just everywhere. Yeah. And you mentioned it yesterday that West Ham kept seeming to get in trouble as they came out, and that's because of this guy. What he does is he creates little semicircles. So you've always got, let's say you've got 2 players pressing 3. That's often what happens as a team's playing out, right? He'll then become the 3rd. But he doesn't go all the way. If you've got 1 player who's pressing the centre back, 1 player who's pressing the right back, he'll come and sit himself just in the middle. So you've got this little semicircle force field around that play out. So it makes the player on the ball think, oh, I've got that. He's right in my eye line. I can't play from there. And then that means the others go and press. And he's the trigger for that. So he's a top quality player. And yesterday, the other thing to mention is obviously the substitutions. Because Unai Emery has got this amazing ability to influence games by making changes. He brought on Luca Digne yesterday to get more solid on that side, because West Ham were getting a lot of joy down there. He makes this change with Emi Buendia coming on, and Buendia has made a difference. Tottenham away, scored the winner against Arsenal. And then what he does with Tielemans is he moves Tielemans back into the base of if Onana's not having his better day, or if he wants to move Rogers into a different position or McGinn into a different position, because he sees something happening in the game. If a left-back's getting loads of joy, as Calafiori was against Arsenal, then the instruction from Emery is to McGinn, take Calafiori in midfield, and then Tielemans comes up the outside. So it's fantastic stuff. They know exactly what their manager wants from them. Yeah,
Daniel Marlon come off the bench and had a big impact as well yesterday. Meanwhile, West Ham bringing on Guido Rodriguez. Goodness me. Pau Wow, point number 4. Dino, Pau Torres, you mentioned it, he didn't play yesterday. Victor Lindelof stepped in his place. But this is one thing I noticed immediately in the game, how bold and brave Villa are as soon as the goalkeeper got the ball. Martinez didn't play yesterday, of course, but the goalie gets the ball, 2 centre-backs from Villa, right back, almost on the goal line. Why?
Yeah, well, he just wants to goad the press. He knows that they can make, we've talked about it with Newcastle before, where they make the pitch really big. And that's what Villa are trying to do when they attack. And so obviously when they defend and when they press from the front, they push right up. And we'll come on to the high line in a minute. But yeah, this guy is dramatically underrated as well. He, as a ball player, good defender, top level defender, but not you know, we're not talking about Van Dijk here, or we're not talking about Romero here as a 1v1 defender, okay? We're talking about a guy who does his job, but then he's got as big a responsibility on the ball for Aston Villa as he has off it. Now, you mentioned he didn't play yesterday, but what we've got is a touch map of Lindelof and Konza from yesterday and where they touch the ball. And that will show your point entirely of where they receive the ball inside their own area. Yeah. So they're trying to get two players to come right out and on them. And obviously then they've got Onana and Kamara, or the two holders in front. The two fullbacks go either way. And then this guy in these games, I mean, Lindelof did it yesterday, but against Arsenal, there was a moment where he had like 3 Arsenal players pressing and he was like, come on, I want you, I've still got you. And he's bringing them on and then he plays them out. And his passing ability is phenomenal. He's the one who finds Morgan Rogers into feet, finds Ollie Watkins into feet, or a couple of times he takes the diagonal risk pass of going right through the middle of the box and right through the middle of the press into John McGinn's feet. And it's absolutely fantastic. It's an outright plan, and he's probably going to be missing for a week or two now from injury, and they will really, really miss him. But Lindelof stepped in yesterday and, to be fair, did a really good job. And if we show the Morgan Rogers goal in a little 3-stage thing here, we've got it comes from Lindelof and it comes from Buendia, who I mentioned, doing what Tielemans does as he replaced him as the 10. So the ball goes along to the left centre-back, then the midfielder runs across, and because he runs across and he thinks that the ball's going to go into the feet there, West Ham do what they should do and go and block the space, block that express passing lane, and then where does Morgan Rogers go? He goes into the space that's been vacated, and Lindelof had the presence of mind to play that ball into Morgan Rogers. And actually, the Duran goal last season, also in the 79th minute at the London Stadium, was a Pau Torres pass into his feet, and this was a Lindelof ball into Morgan Rogers' feet. So it's a plan, it's from a centre-back, and there were times against Arsenal where he was playing like a left 8, Pau Torres, and he actually, the Matty Cash goal was a swing cross from the left-hand side, from the left centre-back to the right-back, who scored at the back post. So Villa are brave, really brave.
Absolutely. Mike Anstey in the office, Dino, though, will be fuming if I don't bring up the fact that Lucas Paqueta gave the ball away, as always, in the build-up to Morgan Rogers' goal. So I've got to get
that was Morgan Rogers' first goal, wasn't it? Absolutely. But I mean, Paqueta and, you know, Villa targeted him. They knew that let's have the ball into his feet, and then Tielemans and Kamara will target him.
We're supposed to be going there in January, isn't he? Point number 5, Dino. Hi-ho, Aston Villa. The high-line press, sucking teams on. It's all about that off-the-ball stuff as well as on once again.
Yeah, and they move as a unit. So you think about that box again. When teams want to play out against Aston Villa, which what they do is they get very tight together. So the back four comes right up towards the halfway line, not as high as they were at the early stages of last season, where they're not like Ange Postecoglou high line, but they come almost up to the halfway line. They've got the two centre-backs in front, but then at this point, Watkins, McGinn, whoever's playing up front instead of Watkins, maybe that's Marlon, and Rogers, they don't go right on. They want you to play out, because then they'll press. And because then they're making the pitch compact. And so when they're out of possession, it's quite a simple thing. Out of possession, make the pitch smaller. Right. In possession, make the pitch bigger, because then the other team have lots more distances to cover. And they're so well structured, they all know their jobs. And so therefore, they lose possession or they have a goal kick, they drop back off, Watkins stays up, the attack line stays up. And when you take an overhead shot of them, they're almost like cones, because it's exactly where Unai Emery wants them to be. And then, of course, when the ball plays, they all know each other's runs. They've got a very settled team. When they've won 10 games in a row after a European week, which is just, it shouldn't happen. They've been absolutely amazing. But that's because if one player comes out, the other player who comes in knows the job. This is not, because we're playing Marlon instead of Watkins, we're going to play in a different way. And, Unai Emery's had to be so clever in the transfer market, because they've got no money. They've really struggled in the transfer market for that. But he's bought types of player that exactly work for him. Like the Tielemans signing was the benchmark. And it's those players who fit into that formation to do that job for him.
Yep, so brilliant stuff then, Dino. Just to bring it back to the question that this video was trying to answer, Aston Villa, are they in the title race?
Well, they are now, and we've got them playing Arsenal again in a couple of weeks' time. They've got Manchester United coming up as well. So I think by the turn of the new year, we'll know if they're genuinely in it or not. At the moment, I wouldn't bet against them because every time the ball goes to anyone on the edge of the box, they smack it in the top corner. But you would think that teams are going to try and work that out. How do they stop those long shots? So it might be that it's how Villa adapt to other teams adapting to them, which goes on. But at the moment, they're a joy to watch. And isn't it great to have 3 teams in the race, not just 2?
Absolutely, Dino. Yeah, great stuff indeed. Thanks very much, mate. As always, I've obviously moaning at you for ages about not doing West Ham. New rule, we only do West Ham when we win, so we could be waiting quite some time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Villa fans, if you're new, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video. Let us know what you think of what Dino's had to say in the comments. And as always, make sure you're back on Thursday for Team Talk, where we will be previewing the biggest game of this weekend.